What is going on, everybody? We are back with more Zelda Ocarina of Time prediction videos. Today we are going over every dungeon in the game. Now I am probably going to start a series where I go into individual dungeons, really dissecting what they could change, every little nitpick in each one. But today we're covering the giant list of dungeons as a whole, talking about some of the major changes they can make for each dungeon. You guys also sent in a lot of your requests, so they will be brought up today if I end up picking your comment. Stay tuned until the end of the video if you want to be featured on the next video that I post. But before we get started, thank you guys so much for your love and support. We are slowly, gradually reaching our goal of 400,000 subscribers. Not even really slowly. You guys have been killing it, leaving tons of likes and subscribes every single day. So thank you so much. We are almost just 5K away from our goal. So let's see how many people we could get to like and subscribe on today's video. Thank you so much. And let's get into all the changes they could add to the dungeons of Ocarina of Time Remake. All things considered, the Great Deku Tree is a pretty great starting dungeon for the game. It's not very long or very detailed or even very difficult, but it's not meant to be. It's literally your first 10 minutes in starting this game, you're in a dungeon already. Some things I would add is just maybe more details, really signifying that you're in the inside of a tree. It's a little too bright in both versions of the game, so maybe dimming it down a bit. Also, maybe even allowing us to go higher into the tree and see more rooms. You don't get to go too high before you have to drop right back down into the tree's roots. Maybe add a new mini-boss battle like a big Scotula or something for this dungeon, as there's not really a mini-boss. I mean, the closest you have is some Deku scrubs that you just use your shield to reflect their nuts. It's not that hard. Whoa. I'd also probably have some puzzles or some more usage or any usage for the Deku nuts. I never really ever use these things to stun any enemies, so maybe there's certain enemies that need to be stunned or some puzzle where you actually need to use them here. That'd be great, or maybe even for the boss Queen Goma. Perhaps some sections you walk outside of the tree for a bit. I mean, you can do that in the Forest Temple. I would love to have maybe some rooms or secret rooms where you can walk out onto the branches of the Great Deku Tree outside for a second. More Goma babies spawn. You really don't even see these creatures. In fact, you can beat the boss so quick you don't even really fight them. There's one room in this dungeon where you'll really fight these guys, so maybe having more of them spawn would be cool. And just give Goma some more phases and last longer, because beating Goma in under 25 seconds is pretty lackluster. Zevents15 stated, more wind-themed puzzles, since it was originally going to be a wind temple, could be pretty cool before that got scrapped. So yeah, maybe making it feel a little like that temple from Wind Waker with Makar could be pretty cool, adding some wind puzzles. Next up, we have Dodongo Caverns. I would add some sort of music instead of just the creepy sounds. The creepy sounds definitely should at least start the dungeon, but then music should follow in and kind of fill in afterwards. But we don't really have any theme or music in this dungeon at all. It's just really eerie, which is strange because it's just like a lava-filled cave in the side of a mountain. Not sure why it's so eerie. Now, technically speaking, I think we're on the inside of a giant Dodongo. You can see giant bones on the walls and a giant skeleton that you have to enter to get into the boss room eventually. So maybe if they added some more details to show that, or maybe some lore behind it, would be pretty cool. I hope that there's more Dodongo enemies and that you're actually forced to fight them this time around. You know what's funny? After so many times of playing this game, I don't think I've ever even tried to fight the Dodongos. You might be able to feed them bombs because I know in other games you can, but there's never a situation in this game where you're forced to fight them. So they just kind of stand there as just obstacles in the room, and you never really have to approach them. So maybe more ways that they actually force you to fight these things. Or maybe using bombs for more puzzles than just blowing up walls in this dungeon would be cool. And then I'd say obviously just a better King Dodongo boss fight, but we've talked about those already. And then we have the last Child Link only dungeon with Lord Jabu-Jabu. I think one thing that would help new players out a lot here is better sense of direction with Ruto. It can get kind of confusing as to where you're supposed to take her, at least at the very beginning, like just knowing that you can even toss her up on a ledge that high. Something that would kind of lead players to understand that would be better, especially for people that are just now coming into this game. But maybe also add some extra rooms, making it bigger. I feel like there's a lot of rooms that's just not much going on in there. Like there's one with a giant moving sponge that eventually you can come back with a boomerang, but it's just for some vases. So actually have some beneficial rooms. Also, the long worm things that you have to take out in order to take out each barrier to move on in the dungeon is the same little fight 3 times in a row. You walk in, get close, throw your boomerang, back up, and you do this 3 separate times, but you have to hit them like 4 or 5 times each time, which is, it's just kind of annoying. Maybe maybe change up how you fight it. Each room could be definitely more interesting, or maybe adding more enemies in each of those rooms. The mini boss could get a slight revamp because all you do is run in circles and throw your boomerang at it. Maybe they could do a little something else with it. And Cream Tangerine 17 stated, aesthetically alters some rooms to look more realistic and like parts of his actual body and organs, and even the room that has a giant acid pool, they can make it look more like a big stomach this time around, which I agree, especially if this is going for more of a realistic look that it looks like it's going for. They're going to have to make Lord Jabu-Jabu look disgusting, which I actually really want. Now we move on to the Adult Link dungeons, and we have the beloved Forest Temple. So we're not going to change too much here because this is such a good dungeon already. But one thing, I would fix the lighting to make it darker like the original, but also keeping some of the foggy areas like the 3DS Remake does, but really just going in for that deep, dark, creepy, mysterious atmosphere this time around. The Poe fights are more interesting this time, and they could actually have bigger areas you fight them in, especially the first two. You just find them in some staircases. Maybe they warp you to a separate room and you can have a more unique boss battle instead of them just spinning around toward you. Like, it's so incredibly easy. I want them to be a little bit different, and maybe they have different looks as well. They're not just the same looking Poe with different colors. Purple Libra also said, add some Poe sisters lore, like actually have a background to why they're there and where do they come from, who do they used to be, would be really awesome as well. There should be quicker ways to traverse back to the main room somehow. I think one of this dungeon's biggest problems is just how long it takes to get back to the main room to find other access points. I don't know, that's just something that I've experienced in the past, not a big deal. But also something other than multiple Stalfos for a mid-boss. Maybe one bigger one that appears after you defeat all the regular sized ones would be pretty cool. Next up, we have the Fire Temple, and believe it or not, I actually really like the Fire Temple to the point where I don't even know if there's many changes that I would say needs to be added here. I'd say one thing they could do is maybe have the Gorons actually do something here. Something that this reminds me of is Mario and Luigi Partners in Time. Inside the giant cube, you would save the Yoshis, and the Yoshis would eventually help you with different puzzles, and then even the final boss of that area. So maybe there's something like that as well here. When you save the Gorons, they will do more than just give you a little hint as to what you're supposed to do later on in the dungeon. Instead, they can help you with some future puzzles, push something out of the way for you, hold something for you, or maybe even help you with the fight against Volvagia at the end, which would be pretty cool. I would like to see more puzzles with the Megaton Hammer. There's not a lot usage there besides hitting a couple of rusty switches, which is strange. I definitely want a better fight against Volvagia. He seems a little too small, skinny, and weak compared to most bosses in this game. But going back to the Goron thing, I would honestly just make them more unique. Something that I've said in the past was like make them have unique looks like they do in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Even Skyward Sword, they had like that unique look to them. Different hair, like a beard, different body shape, to actually give them identity and have them all have different personalities, and maybe something that you can do with them outside of the dungeon after you save them. You can go back and talk to them or something. Just give them some life because they just feel like the same Goron copy and pasted all over the dungeon. Also, make the Flare Dancer mini-boss a lot better too, because you just stand there and spam bombs. I mean, we can literally just talk about every mini-boss and every boss and how it can be improved, which we already did. Check that video out. Next up, we have the dreaded Water Temple, and I know a lot of people want this to be completely changed. I don't, because I don't think the Water Temple is actually that bad. I think there's some tricky moments, but I think there is a way to make this a lot better. And I think the 3DS version definitely does that by having you, one, have a quick item select for the Iron Boots, which I'm sure is going to be around again, allowing you to quickly take on and take off the boots. And the 3DS version also highlights the water level rooms and makes them distinct so you know which way to go back to, which I think is a plus. So I don't think there's too much more tweaking they need to do to make it easier. They even zoom in certain areas telling you where you need to go, like when you raise the water level for the first time and the block raises, you know exactly to go underneath because the camera zooms in on it. So I feel like they hold your hand a lot more in the 3DS version, and they'll probably do it in this version as well. But some other changes I would like to see is perhaps a quicker way to raise and lower the water. Maybe after you find all the water level song charts, you can just play the Serenade of Water and you can choose what water level to raise it at, depending on if you got them all or not, or if there's only 2 water levels that you found, you can raise it to one of those 2. Wherever you are in the dungeon, which would be really, really cool and save so much time. They should also enhance the combat against Shadow Link. I hope the combat as a whole is enhanced for the battling in this game, but the fight against Shadow Link should be really, really cool. Someone actually had a really good idea with this one. Slot Detective on YouTube stated, what if the Water Temple watches how you play and Shadow Link reflects it when you finally get to that boss room? So it plays custom to whoever's playing in this dungeon, which would be super cool. They could also have a way better Morpha final boss fight. I mean, once again, the bosses in this game are kind of lackluster. And then Selfarius, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, had an idea to be able to freeze certain water levels, because before you get into the water temple, you actually go through kind of an ice cavern, which was going to be an ice temple in the original version. So what if they added some ice puzzles to it and stuff, where you could actually freeze the water in certain sections? That would be pretty cool. And then they also had the idea to have a new stalker mechanic for Shadow Link. Throughout the dungeon, he drops down to fight you or something, or he's like stalking you and watching you from the background, kind of similar to Naburu in Gerudo Valley. That would be pretty cool, where you can fight him multiple times before getting to that mid-boss room. Next up, we have the Shadow Temple, another favorite of mine, and I think a lot of people's in this game. Have the hover boots have more usages and not as slippery. Maybe that's just the downside of wearing them, which I kind of understand, but they are just very slippery in the original game at least. Keep its creepy feel, but even darker and creepier here. I want the lighting to be really dark and really to home in on this creepy dungeon. The ghost ship section maybe has new inside of the ship areas for you to explore, and also just a better gauntlet as you ride it towards the end of the dungeon. And I would once again like to see more from the boss fights, with Dead Hand being more than just letting him grab you, and Bongo Bongo having another phase to him. But we have some other comments from you guys. Ready Spaghetti states, bring the stealth missions from the castle yard to some areas here. And I think this would be a great idea. Maybe there's some like lurking reapers or something, like from Kid Icarus Uprising, where you're going through hallways and there's reapers walking around or something and you can't get caught, or maybe some type of new wall master, floor masters that actually grab you if they see you and there's nothing you can do about it. Tumbleweed actually said, have several rooms be super dark. I kind of brought that up, but I agree, like some rooms almost pitch black, and maybe it forces you to have to light some torches or something. I don't really know how, because you can't use the Deku Stick as an adult. Maybe they let you use the Deku Stick as an adult in this game. Who knows? And then we have one from Beast Gamer that states, add some lore with the Prisoners of War. Maybe the Lens of Truth can also hide some creepy new lore details as well. This would be awesome. We know that this is like the dark era of Hyrule, where they were like putting their prisoners down here and torturing them. So actually leaning into that more would be great. I know in the 3DS version they got rid of like blood splatter and too much of the creepy stuff, but I want them to really like dive in here, because that's the whole point of this dungeon. This temple is supposed to be extremely creepy and a dark side of Hyrule, and they really need to show it here. Next up, we have the last main temple of the game, being the Spirit Temple. I want more with the Mirror Shield. Yes, Twinrova here can be a lot more complicated, but I actually kind of want the opposite to happen here. I want them to take an element of the boss battle and put it into the dungeon, like the Mirror Shield being able to kind of reflect and also consume energy like fire and ice. Maybe there's some puzzles that actually utilize that in the dungeon, because it's kind of like a first time and only time you ever see something like that with that shield in that boss battle. So I want to see more with that. The Iron Knuckle fights are more unique this time, with combat based on child and adult Link, meaning when you fight the, Iron Knuckle as a child, it's a little bit different. There's something strange or maybe a little easier with the fight. Adult Link is like they got stronger and like they have a new ability. And then they can have the final Iron Knuckle, which is the Sage Naburu, be a lot harder with more unique combat and stuff to really separate them and, make that final, Iron Knuckle fight before the final boss Twinrova feel really special. Something else that'd be really cool is, could you imagine if Twinrova had the ability to turn Link into young Link whenever they wanted to, and his sword would fly away, and you had to do something as a child in order to hurt them before you could grab your sword and turn back into an adult. That'd be awesome, like little time travel back and forth in the middle of a boss battle. Maddox states, has echoes of what you did there as a child, like move certain blocks and stuff, but I could honestly see this being maybe a little tedious, simply because if they have a mechanic where you can move something as a child towards the adult section, but then you have to come back as an adult to do something else with it, that could be complicated, because if you didn't move it far enough or you didn't do enough with it as a child, you had to go all the way back outside the dungeon, back to the Temple of Time, back to a child or to an adult, and then back to the temple again just to do certain things. So that could be crazy. So if it's more like minor changes, like maybe a certain pot that you broke or a certain brick or block that you moved for only the child section, you can see it moved still as an adult. Just something that's like a good quality of life change, that like, hey, that's cool that they did that, a cool little neat detail. Like another really cool example is maybe as a child you can hit the wall with your sword and you'll leave like a cut in the wall or like a slash or something. And if you come back as an adult, that slash is still stored in that wall and you can see it still. That'd be insane. I don't even know if the game could even possibly do that, but man, that would be so cool. And finally, we have Ganon's Tower. I think after the themed doors and rooms, Ganon's Tower could actually have a new layout and portion that is its own unique specific theme that's like a dark purple castle theme or something that you have to go through before you even get to the floors with these stairs that lead up to the mini boss fights. Like a whole second section that is specifically themed in a new way would be really cool. I think also incorporating a new original mini boss here would be pretty cool, like another Phantom Ganon or something along those lines. The final fight with Ganondorf adds a sword duel, like a little 1v1, and the final fight with Ganon is bigger and more unique of a final boss and goes back to being dark and creepy like it was in the original. And I still would also like it to end with a split path ending where you can choose to lose or you can choose two other separate paths, going back as a child, leading into Majora's Mask, or staying an adult. I think this could be a cool way to add some extra cutscenes to the game. But that is all of my ideas and some of your ideas for new dungeon changes in Ocarina of Time. And like I said, I will probably go over each dungeon separately in its own video, really diving deep into every room, every section, and every small change that they could add in each dungeon. So stay tuned for that. But in the next video, we will be talking about new dungeons that they can add to this game, and specifically talking about the scrapped Ice Temple and also the scrapped Light Temple. I believe those are the only ones that's been scrapped, so we'll probably just be talking about those two. But if there's any other information that you have, feel free to comment them down below and give me your ideas for new temples in this game. Comment the word temple in all caps followed by your new temple wishes. This can be any ideas that you have for an ice or a light temple, but if you want to add another one that maybe makes sense, make sure it makes sense to the actual story and it's not just adding a temple for the sake of adding a temple. Comment your details down below. Be very specific and descriptive, and you could appear in my next video. But thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe to stay up to date on all things Zelda and Nintendo in general, and I hope you all have a blessed rest of your day. Enjoy Star Fox, because we're about to talk about that too soon. Thanks, guys.